Hello, everyone. Good evening, good morning, good afternoon, good night, wherever you are. That's how the virtual works. I hope everybody is okay. So can you give a little thumb up in the YouTube chat if you can hear us and see us well, please? Oh, the suspense is killing me. Okay, so we have a yeah, we do have a copy. Okay, all right. So let's get starting. So we are together for 2 hours. It's a live workshop full of interactivity, and we will talk you about GraphQL. So first, Stefano, would you introduce yourself? Suraj? Suraj, hi. Yeah. Oh, Stefano, you muted, it seems. So Stefano will talk and I will repeat everything that Stefano said. Yeah, I will. Yeah, okay. So, while Stefano is fixing that sound issue, I will just introduce myself. So I'm Cedric Lunven. I'm leading the developer advocacy team at DataStax.
What
I do
about
a lot
now?
of Cassandra. Yeah, so, waiting for the loop back on YouTube. So I'm doing a lot of
Okay, I'm
training,
good.
public speaking.
Cedric, I'm good.
I'm
Just
okay.
sorry.
Trainer on Cassandra. And 8 years ago, I created an open source framework called FF4J, Java Geek. And I did a lot of APIs in my life, including GraphQL APIs. So that's quite useful for today. On screen, you see my coordinates, GitHub, LinkedIn, Twitter. Feel free to invite me in your network. It's always good to have new friends. So back to Stefano, that is not muted anymore.
Yes, so sorry, my settings got crazy by themselves. That's the lamest excuse one can invent. I'm Stefano, nice to meet you. I see a few known names in the chat, so hello everyone. Yes, so I'm a developer advocate in the DataStax developers team. I like Cassandra and distributed systems, and lately I've got an interest in GraphQL. So today we're going to see a lot of things, do a lot of hands-on. So I'm very glad that we can start with me speaking, by the way.
Okay, all right. So it's not only me and Stefano on screen. We have an extended team that help us preparing the content, delivering the content, answering your question in the chat. I've seen David and Aaron and Craig at least right now in the chat to here to help you answering any question you might have. It's an interactive session. Feel free to ask any question. There is no bad question. Those guys are there to help you. So today, 2 hours where we will dig into GraphQL, what it is, how do you consume a GraphQL API, and how do you build your own GraphQL API. Okay? So we should use the 2 hour, I think, with so much content we do have.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's an interactive session. Okay, we are live on YouTube, I think on Twitch, but Twitch is really just a backup. We are monitoring the chats mainly on YouTube. You can also ask your question on Discord, and as a matter of fact, it's useful to register to Discord, because when the session ends, if you still have questions, you can reach out to us using the Discord room. And we reach 19,000 Discord member in the room this weekend. So, pretty amazing. So there you will find a lot of experts for any of your questions. We will do games, we will do quiz. We will ask you question live, and to do so, we will use a tool called Menti. So very soon, I will ask you to go to menti.com to play together. At the end, we play a game with that, and if you answer fast, we will ship you swag in your house for free. So stay with us up to the end. So it's a workshop, not a webinar. We expect you to do some work with us, but do not worry, you don't have to install anything. It's all web-based. You can do code, you can do databases, you can do GraphQL, you can do calls, and it's all web-based. So that's pretty cool. Also, the session is recorded. So if you feel if you are a bit behind, if you're lagging behind, stay just with us, stop doing the hands-on, listening about what we say, and come back later to do the hands-on at your pace. Because if you do the hands-on, we will redeem you a badge. So you have a small Google form to fill, and just a screenshot to upload to prove that you have completed the hands-on, and we will redeem you a badge. So I repeat, no certificate just to attend the session, but if you do the homework, they are very easy. Then you get that pretty nice badge that you can brag with on LinkedIn. The session is has been built for beginners. Okay, so don't be scared. We will explain most of the thing, and we are here to answer your question. So hey, if you are a beginner, relax, no complex code to write. If you're an intermediate, hey, maybe do the exercise with us if you can. And expert, yeah, do the stuff as you like. Maybe install stuff locally if you want to. Challenge us. That's also the good part of the life that we like.
Yeah, and if you are expert, you can also submit a PR to our code. We are always happy to, accept improvements.
Oh yeah, we don't have
in our
enough
example
of those.
code.
Exactly, we don't have enough PR. I agree. Okay, so I told you about Menti. So now is the time for you to open a new tab in your browser or use your phone and go to menti.com. There, you will be asked to provide a code. And so the code today is 2414 1799.
Yeah, it's also in the chat. Oh, maybe you can't see.
Yes.
Sorry, I will move Cedric a bit so you can see.
Oh, yeah. I'm overlapping the code.
Not anymore. But anyway,
Okay.
you find the code in the YouTube chat as well. And please join.
You can scan the QR code, with your phone. That's working as well. Okay, so let's see. We are 55 on YouTube, so let's see how much people we get here. So when you join, use the sum up in Menti just for us to see how many you are. I only see 15 people right now. Come on, we can do better. 19.
Yeah, consider if you join now, you will just stay connected to the end, and in the end, you will be given a chance to participate in the quiz and maybe win some swag, besides testing what you learned, which is the real treasure you will get from today. So
yeah. Also, the code is always on screen at the above us. Yeah. At the top, you see the code always written. Okay, 24. Okay, let's wait to have a quorum, so more than half people.
We need, there we go.
Yeah, 25. Okay, two more. 26. Yeah, I think, yeah. Okay, one more. Okay, let's get rolling. We have a lot of content to go through. All right. So to start with, a few questions. So no challenge here. That's just ways for us to know more about you and for you to have your first touch with Menti if this is the first time you are playing with us. So first question, how much experience do you have with GraphQL?
Let's see.
I never heard about. You are exactly in the good place.
Yeah.
Today is really introduction to GraphQL.
I know the concepts. Yeah, an even split. I use it here and there. Great. Nice to see.
Yeah, so yeah,
experience.
some of you already know it. So that's good. You can jump into practice pretty soon. Okay, second question for you. Which API are you developing, if any, and pick multiple? Let's see how REST is still leading the way. How much REST? Oh, WebSocket. Whoa, that's cool. Yeah, sorry for the SOAP web service guy. I mean, maybe you like it. So.
Yeah, but probably in a million years from now, RESTful will still be, towering. Who knows? It's hard.
You look at that, gRPC as well, so it's getting traction. That's cool.
And of course, WebSockets.
WebSocket, all right. So, yep, we are, mostly front end, so I guess.
Yeah.
All right.
Well, there is
so
to everyone's taste today. So.
Yeah, really two small questions. So keep this tab open somewhere because this is where we will come back at the end to play the game together and ask you those five to six questions to win the swag. Okay, back to the slide and the magic of the live. Um, so let's have a look about what are we trying to achieve. Okay, so if you want to build a full stack application, you will have your application with 2 layers, front end and back end, and probably the database. Yeah, obvious, right? And then using mobile or web browser, you will interact with the front end. Super easy, right? Here, immediately, you see in the database block, you also have already an API. I will explain you in a minute what it is. Here is the technology we will use today. So we will work with the database called Cassandra. And on top of Cassandra, you will find something called a data gateway that will already expose APIs. So that's pretty cool for us to consume APIs. We have nothing to do, we need nothing to build. We will have a GraphQL APIs working for us just to see how are we using that, what are the concepts, and what are the operation we can do. But hey, here we want a full-fledged. So then we will explain you how to build the backend as well. And you know what? The backend is in Java. And one backend is in Java. And we will finish by a front-end React that will invoke the GraphQL API as well. So, you know, a lot of consuming, but also building a small one for you to have the full pictures of hopefully.
Yeah.
And you know, the database takes some time to initialize. So this is why I will explain you quickly about the database. And then first hands-on will ask you to start the database, you know, to get ready later. So the database we are working on today is Apache Cassandra, NoSQL distributed database. So you install Cassandra on multiple machines, and the more capacity, the more throughput you need, you simply add machine to the network. It scales linearly. There is no master. The data is replicated. You can lose any of the node. So this is why we say it's self-healing. You lose any of the node, and if it's come back, the database will heal itself. Pretty cool. It's an Apache 2 project, so no chance to change the license anytime soon. So vendor independent, of course. And those nodes that you see on screen, or you can install them about everywhere. Super easy to install. So having nodes distributed across the world or distributed across platform, like different clouds, if you want to. Remember, you won't install anything today. You won't install Cassandra. So we need to use a service. So a software as a service. So, and to do so, we will use the platform called ASTRA, astra.datastats.com. And inside ASTRA, you will find Cassandra. Oh, what a surprise. And also the little gateway that will expose Cassandra with multiple APIs. And again, quite obvious, the one that we will use today is GraphQL. All right.
Yeah.
So, you know, let's get rolling. And I think we can go immediately and with Stefano to create
Yes. That's
database right now.
awesome. Okay, so maybe I'll switch to the demo screen, which means we get a bit smaller.
And
Yeah.
let me share the URL of GitHub
Oh, yes.
in the chat
That
right
should
now.
be in the Menti. Okay, so this is my screen, and maybe I first. So, yeah, Cedric is sharing his. Yeah, maybe I can also share the link to Astra, because. So, okay, let's start from the start. There is a GitHub repository containing everything, as you saw. So the slides, material, additional links, anything, and also instructions to do the practice on your own. And today we are going to use that to follow the steps. And the first part gives instruction on how to create your own AstraDB instance, which is the database you're going to use today, containing its own data layer, data gateway, exposing GraphQL interface. So let's start. You see, I'm browsing the repository, and the first part is database setup. So log in or register to AstraDB. In the YouTube chat, you just saw a link, register for Astra. Then you can start from that one and you will be given the chance to register your account here for free. I guess you can do GitHub, Google sign in, or you can username, email and password. That's the same. Immediately upon entering, so of course I already have an account and I'm going to log in with that one. But in your case, you will be creating the account as you enter. Okay, so after creating the account, now I'm going somewhat slower, so you all have time to create your account, and eventually you will end up in a similar dashboard as you see here. And in particular, on the left, you will see your databases. You will probably not have databases, and you will be either prompted to create a database, or you will just see a button here, create database. So what you do after creating your account in AstraDB, in Astra, you will create a database, exactly as I'm doing now. So I'm hitting this button, create database, here on the upper left. Actually, you can also click on this big create serverless database. That's actually the same. And I'm going ahead and creating my database. Now, I'm going a bit slow to give you all time to finish creating your account. The point is that this operation of creating a database does everything for you. So you just feel, what kind of database you want. Let's call it workshops. And I just draw your attention to the fact that these are preferred values given in the README as well. And if you stick to these values, everything is simpler from here. So let's call the database workshops. And then you will also be asked to create a key space in it. And this is intro GraphQL, as you see here. Maybe I'm trying to make this screen a bit bigger. Maybe that's better to see. Intro GraphQL. So what's a key space? That's just not so important for us today, but a key space is a grouping of tables and other settings and other things within Cassandra and within AstraDB as well. So we will create a couple of tables, and they will be all in the key space intro GraphQL, just as a logical way of grouping related tables. Then you have seen in the slides right now that AstraDB is in the cloud, managed for you by DataStax in the cloud, and so all you have to choose is what is the provider, the cloud provider, and the region, and where the database will be deployed, your own instance of the database. Please stick to Google Cloud as provider and look for any region. So I'm in Europe, so I'm going to go for Belgium, Europe and Belgium for Google Cloud. There are many more regions, but today, of course, we are going to create a free, and you're going to use a free account, and the free tier has some limitations in the regions available. So please stick to Google Cloud so we can start using the database immediately. So workshops, intro GraphQL, and then you choose GCP as provider and any region that fits your bill. So after clicking this button, create database, ta-da, your database is being created. And now something very cool will happen, because the database creation process has just been made super cool. And this is one of since a few days, actually. So this new flow is very cool. Well, if you haven't seen the previous one, you can't judge probably, but I have to say this is super cool compared to, so you have a bit less things to do manually, basically. So once your database is created, while it is being created, you see finishing up, you are already given a token. So what is a token? Well, this database is out there waiting for you in the cloud. So you need some way to connect to it, which means you need some routing information to reach the proxy and all that. And not only that, but you also need to be authenticated to be able to access your database. I mean, it's your database. You don't want anyone just going there and helping themselves to your tables, right? So there is, of course, an authentication layer. And all that is contained into these token. Now, you see there are a lot of dots here, but actually you can also make it visible, and this is your secrets. Basically, this token in JSON form is your secrets. You can download that, or at least you should copy these values to a safe place. Now, this is my super safe text editor, which I'm going to use to store the token. Of course, this token has been broadcast live, so I will take care of deleting it, but that's my case. What you should do with your token, you just keep it there somewhere in a safe place. Now, let's say in particular today you are going to use of various parts, we are going to use this token proper, the long string that starts, maybe I'm trying to make this a bit bigger, the long string starting with ASTRA CS. This is the token proper we are going to use later. Oh, look, while we were speaking, my database is now active. That's great. So maybe we can ask around our folks to give us a thumbs up if you manage to create your database and get your token. Please give me a thumbs up if you get your token. And probably your database will also be active. And if not, it will be in a few minutes. That's not a big concern. So Cedric has a thumbs up. Great.
Yeah,
so
but I cheated. I had my database ready before.
Yeah.
Ha ha ha.
Yeah. So in case, okay, yes. In case some of you might already have a database from, say, a previous workshop. And in that case, we ask you to just add a new key space to it, which is a slightly different procedure. Maybe I'm going to show it very quickly while we wait for a bit of thumbs up, which are coming along. So very good. Okay, so I'm going to click Go to Database, which will bring me back to the standard ASTRA dashboard. And I can see my workshop database here. Very good. And it is green, meaning it's active and ready. So if I go to, yeah, so this would be the general overall dashboard. And there is my database workshop, which is active at the moment. If I click on it, we will be later do stuff here, so I will stay here. But in case some need to create a token because they already had the database, there are various ways to do that. One of them is through these organization settings. The other is through the general dashboard. Here you can go to this. My UI, I made it too big. You can choose your workshop database, and then by clicking on this hamburger, this dot menu, there is a generate token. Yes, so I see there are two databases with the same name. That's not a problem, because what I show, so databases have a unique ID, so the name is somehow an additional label you can give for your convenience. Of course, you might find confusion, but okay.
No, that's correct. The database name is not a unique identifier.
So there is an
each
ID.
one has the unique ID. Yeah.
Of course, an alternative thing, you can always go to your database and add a key space, as you see here. So you might, Youssef, you might have wanted to add a key space to your previous workshop. That's not a problem at all. I mean, either way works. So I see no questions about I need to create a token. That means that everyone had a new database. And I assume at this point, you all have your own token. Please don't give it away. Don't make it visible to anyone else. Okay,
yeah, nice.
So we have the database and we have the token. I think with this part done, we might jump back to a bit of learning about GraphQL. Cedric, back to you.
Yeah, I
okay?
think. Yeah, I think. Yeah, I think ready to roll. Ready to roll. You know, just on Astra, as you can see, it's free to use. Yeah, you won't get charged as long as you're not using like 40 million queries a month. And if the database is not used at all, it will go hibernated, and it will wake up when you need it. This is what we call serverless. So serverless meaning you can scale to 0. So if the database is not in use, it will stop. And of course, your credits, even if the credits are huge per month, will not even get impacted at all. So pretty good to any, you know, side project, student project, or POC, POV, you know, super easy to use. All right. So, and you know, we spot ASTRA because there you have the GraphQL APIs available out of the box. So let's have a look to these GraphQL APIs. So it has been created by Facebook in 2012. First, it was for mobile apps, internal mobile apps. Quite released or went public in 2015 when Facebook gave that talk at React.js Conf, you know, React.js. Maybe why React is all about GraphQL lately. I mean, this is where it's come from. And it was open the same year, but not really adopted yet. You know, what was the big shift to GraphQL? And, you know, everybody's agreed on that is when GitHub released their API v3, where you know, they leverage on GraphQL to federate multiple services and provide a better experience. So GraphQL is, as you already read on my slide, is an application programming interface, new way of API, still working on HTTP, like REST. So with a dedicated query language, server-side runtime, and you will see that it has been designed and shaped to invoke, to ask, to request exactly what you want and no more. So that's super efficient for the payload and pretty close to the customer needs. Okay, so let's see how it works. So it's work with a language, a schema. So it's so GraphQL Web Protocol and HTTP, and you will provide the type and the function you want to use. So the type, it's, as you can see on screen, like the type workflow is strongly typed. GraphQL SDL, schema definition language. So when you want to start working with an API, the first things you need to know is your data model. I mean, at least your entities, your types, your struct, what will be the object you will want to work with, and the properties of each of those. Okay. Then, if some entities are related, linked, like the second box here, incoming workshop, title, abstract, speakers, and you want to get some attributes for something else within speakers, which is one-to-many relationships, GraphQL can do it for you on the fly. So it is GraphQL that will do the aggregation, composition of data coming from multiple sources. That's pretty cool. Okay. Also, when you invoke a GraphQL API, so let's say you want to retrieve incoming workshop, to know which workshop is coming on this YouTube channel once every 2 weeks. Well, when you invoke the list of workshop, you say exactly which fields you need. And the response payload will be reduced and will contain only what you need. And that's kind of a killer features for mobile when you want to reduce the payloads as much as possible. So yeah, very famous on mobile and also front-end applications. All right, so as a type, you have a lot of scalar, int, float, string, boolean, IDs, no surprise. You can set some attributes are required and some attributes are multi-valued, list. So it can build some scalar or a user-defined type. So that's pretty cool, right? So the speaker is a user-defined type with the name is mandatory and email here is optional. That's pretty cool. All right. So here, screenshot from GraphQL, right? Here I got a list of types. So here a query, character, planet, species. And you can see a sample of queries where you want to retrieve the heroes, the friend heroes, the name of word of the friend of heroes. And you can see that the more nested levels you are, the deeper you dig into your data model. And for you, it's still a single call. So for the client, it's super convenient to federate data coming from multiple sources. Okay. All right, but you will see exactly what it looks like with your own schema in some of the hands-on. So when you have your schema, you will implement the GraphQL API. You still have some work to do, of course, code all the method that you have designed before. Now when I want to query those functions, I can use read-only queries using the keyword query. So very important, the keyword query is for read-only queries. So here I put a label, which is list workshop. I could have put everything, invoking a functions that is called workshop, that taking some arguments. So here dates, okay, and name, abstract, and speaker are exactly what I want in the response. Okay, so query, the name of the function is workshop, and the where clause, if you want, or the argument you're sorted by is what you see. Name, abstract, speaker is what you treat. I think that's pretty pretty simple again for the client. All right, and now when you execute the query, you just provide exactly what you need. So here, hero with 3 attributes. If I execute the same query, just providing name, I will not get neither height nor mass if I do not put them in the input query. Oh, I keep repeating, so I think now it must be pretty clear for you. So it was query. Now, when you need to update, create, delete, meaning changing the state of your data, we will use another keyword called mutation. So mutation, create workshop again is the label. You can put whatever you like here, just a label. So create workshop is the function you want to use. Open bracket, here this is the argument, the parameter of your function. So more parameter, and that's expected. You want to insert something. So you will insert a workshop with 2 speakers here, and the name, again, as before, is what is returned. You do a single mutation here. You want to create a workshop, but you don't know, maybe under the hood, multiple tables will be updated. That's the work of the GraphQL API to figure this out for you. You don't have to. You work as a single function that will federate, aggregate, compose all the entities that you need. So again, it's pretty easy. So in a nutshell, and to be honest, that's me and Stefano feedback on GraphQL overall, our own opinion. So SWOT at the end, meaning strength, weakness, opportunity, and threat, kind of what's good, what's not so good, what we like, what we don't like. Yeah, we need to be critics. It's still not a silver bullet. So what is good? So discoverability, introspection. So you define a schema. The schema is exposed by the endpoint. So that means if I tell you, hey, go to that website, they do have a GraphQL API, you go there, you ask for the schema, part of the spec, and you get the list of everything's available. What does that mean? That means that there are some tools, and you will use some tools very soon, some tools to interact with the GraphQL API and have auto completion and get exactly what are the available functions and yeah, complete the query for you. Auto-complete, we'll see that. Declarative data switching, when you implement a GraphQL API, to explain how the data is being retrieved from multiple tables or a single table. You totally have hence that you can change the behavior. You can do some caching if you need. So you can improve the performance by having the low-level access to data. So schema stitching, you can tweak the schema in your way. We have seen a couple already. Customized response, you have a couple of queries where you design exactly what you want. Flexible versioning, well, you can keep adding some attributes in the entities and it will still be backward compatible. So that's pretty cool. Now, if you need multiple major versions to run at the same times, yeah, this is an issue because by default, a GraphQL does have a single endpoint. So if you want two major versions at the same time, you need two runtime. All right, and the single endpoints also have some other issues. So we have a single endpoint that offers multiple functions. So how do you know which function are used, which function are not in use? How do you monitor the response time, the use case? It's not as easy as REST. REST, you have a lot of resources. You can have some monitoring per resource and know exactly what happened. In GraphQL, this is the job of the developer to actually send some log or metric or information because there is no magic API management proxy that will do that work for you.
Yeah, if I may add one thing, it's also a bit cumbersome less immediate than REST when you have part of the resources that are available to anyone and part that are behind, say, an authorization token. So that the fact that single endpoint can mix everything makes for a bit of a more difficult way to handle this mixed situation. But I mean, that can be done, of course, headers and all that, but still. There is a question about schema-less GraphQL, and I think I answered in the chat. As far as I know, GraphQL starts with a schema definition, so it's pretty strictly schemaful.
Exactly.
That's right. Okay.
Yeah, it's totally schemaful. Yeah. By design, you already have a schema. Now you can make some fields optional, but yeah, that's the way it is. Complex implementation, yeah. I keep saying it's simple for client. I said it 3 times, and for that reason, when you as a backend developer need to create the GraphQL API, then you need to ask the good question. Hey, should I really do multiple select in my table under the hood just to get a single result? Or will it be too slow? Do I need some cache? Do I need to limit the number of requests that will happen under the hood? You can imagine that a user will ask for a huge tree of objects that will trigger a lot of nested join under the hood, and this is not what you want. So you might need some rate limiting. And caching is hard because most requests are different, right? So where we see the sweet spot is what we call backend for frontend. So you do not want to invoke a data API directly for the React app, the frontend app. There would be some security issue. You will expose your token. You always need that intermediate layer. And so backend for frontend with specialized service working for every single screen, exactly provided what's needed, and kind of wrapping all these security issues that you might have. So good for aggregation, composition, federation. And when the bandwidth matters, especially because, as I keep saying, you can reduce the payload by providing in the request exactly what you need. All right. And with that, I think I will introduce just a couple of tools. And one is called GraphQL, graphical. So here you enter a GraphQL endpoint in the URL, like a browser. And on the right part of the screen, you will see the schema, the famous schema. I told you GraphQL is auto-discoverable. You see all the entities and all the functions available. Based on that, you will see 2 columns in the tool. One is to shape your queries and mutation with autocomplete. And in the middle, here we start in pink, it's the result of your queries. That's one tool. There's another tool called GraphQL Playground. That's working pretty much the same, right? Just the color that changed. And you will use both today. I think you start with graphical,
Yeah.
and then GraphQL Playground, because GraphQL Playground is part of ASTRA out of the box.
Yeah.
So if I go back to the overall architecture, this is what this looks like. You have your ASTRA database running here on the right. So Cassandra has been started, as you've seen in your ASTRA user interface. And you will see in a minute that you already have a GraphQL API to interact with the database. Woohoo, pretty cool. And the GraphQL Playground to interact with that. So, without anything else, you can already play with the API. But hey, we wanted as well you to get in touch with GraphQL, and we have a mock GraphQL API that you will also use. You will see another schema, another sample. So, like that, you have a pretty good overview about how to consume. As of now, we are only consuming GraphQL, okay? And now back on you, Stefan.
Yes. So demo, second part of the hands-on. Okay, so now we are going to play with these two tools, and those both feel the need for tools to interact with an existing GraphQL API from your browser, playing with queries, trying them out, and so on. And they, as Cedric said, they work pretty in the same way. And with that, I'm going to go back to my screen and here. Okay, so let's leave the database active, waiting for us a little more, because now we are going to turn on to GitPod. Okay, so the next step in the demo, in the hands-on, is to launch GitPod. Many of you, I guess, know GitPod already, but a small refresh. GitPod is a very cool IDE. Actually, it's a whole container. It's a Linux box running for you in the cloud with an IDE based on VS Code on top of it. So if you, maybe I can drop the link in the YouTube chat also, GitPod. That should be it. Now, Nightbot should give us a link. Anyway, if you go to the repository at step 3, launch Gitpod, there is this nice button, opening Gitpod. Please control click it so that it opens in a new window. Now I'm going to move this window here for better. Okay, so Gitpod is going to ask me to tie my GitHub account, which I promptly do. Now you don't see it, but I'm asked to authorize. Maybe in your cases, it might be already tied, who knows? But anyway, thanks to the magic of single sign-on, this is all working for us magically. And what is happening as we speak is that Gitpod kindly has created an image for me, you see, with everything ready. So this is now a running Linux container somewhere in the cloud, which I can access here. I see there are 2 consoles in the bottom running something. We are going quickly on that in a second. On the top, for our convenience, the README is open, and this will also serve as a file editor. And on the left, you can navigate your directories. So this is actually an IDE working on its own files in the cloud. And what files is this editor working on? Well, that's just a Git clone of our repository, which contains the code. So this is your own clone of the repo. And this is what you are going to run. So if you have clicked, like I did, on this Open in Gitpod button here, you should by now see something going on in these 2 consoles. In particular, the left console is installing NPM packages like crazy for the front end, the React app that we are going to run in a little while. And the right side console is probably running already. And this has compiled and run a Java application package with Spring Boot, I guess. Yeah. So if I didn't have pop-up blockers, I would already have seen the application, well, the GraphQL interface, the GraphQL tool running. It's not, so what you probably also have the same issue, which means if you look at these tiny pop-up blocker here, you should be able to manually open these URL. In case you didn't automatically, we can show you how to get to this URL, but you probably are good just to unblock the pop-up, because what happened? We instructed this Gitbot to run the Java application, the Java server, and we are going to quickly look at how its architecture is. But the important thing is that automatically, together with the application, the server, the GraphQL server running, also a GraphQL instance has been created, and it's there, available, running in Gitbot, and available at a particular URL, which will be different for you. But it will have this shape, so it will be 8080- whatever your Gitbot is, /GraphQL. And now we can start playing a bit with these, because so maybe I can quickly show again this slide to give a bit of context. So we are going to do two different things. One is completely unrelated to AstraDB, because this GraphQL API is written in Java and it is running directly in your Gitbot standalone. It will not access data from the database. Rather, it will mock in the code. It will have just a few rows ready to be returned to requests. And that's to showcase one of the pathways, namely the one where you yourself want to write your own GraphQL API server. You have some data that you want to expose through GraphQL, and you write the application that serves GraphQL, that speaks the GraphQL protocol as a server. And this is done here in Java with the DGS framework, which there are a couple of slides on that later. But the point is that this is running by its own, and it will also spin the GraphQL application. So let me go back to this case, and this is it. So let me scroll with GraphQL. Now, very quickly, let's quickly look at the code, but just to have an idea what's going on. So this is a very simple application. Let me open GraphQL backend examples. This is a Java application, so I have to dig to source, main, resources, schema. Look, here we just said GraphQL always starts with a schema definition, and this is it. So there is this resource file that in the GraphQL schema definition language defines what are the types available. And here we have a type called show with title release year, and a type called genre with value, which is a string. And the queries available are two queries. One is give me the shows, and one is give me the genres. This is just the schema. This defines the shape. But then where's the code? Good question. The code is in Java, example demo, and here is a bunch of Java files. Let me just open this one in particular. These are data classes basically, but if I go to genres data fetcher, this is an interesting thing, because thanks to the DGS package, with just a couple of annotations, you are telling this class, DGS component says this class is going to be one of the components making up the full engine of the GraphQL server serving data. And in particular, for example, this function, this method, genres, corresponds to one of the queries you saw in the schema. And what it does, it just returns basically a list of objects of type genre, instances of the Java class genre, but this is all marshaled into a GraphQL properly formatted return object, thanks to the DGS framework and infrastructure around your code. So you have actually write not so much code, and you get a fully fledged GraphQL server. So that's just a very quick look at the code. You find more information in the README, and probably you will see a couple of slides on that, but that's just to motivate what is going to happen next. Because I see someone, Satish has a problem in the GraphQL editor. Maybe the trick might be to run, so if, okay, Satish, if you see the Java application running, which is this kind of bunch of info messages, Spring boot info messages, application running, completed initialization. If this works, then what you can do is, maybe I think we can show that quickly.
Yeah.
I can spin a new console with this plus button, and then I can just write GP URL, I think 8888, that should be it. So let me check. Oh, 8080, sorry.
8080, yeah.
So if you, I'm writing in the YouTube chat, so open new console, run GP URL 8080, and the output, okay.
Is the one you will.
The output of this command is the full URL that you should manually open in a new tab, and this is what you are going to see. The point is that probably your pop-up blocker got in the way, as or something similar. Maybe for some reason newly exposed the ports were not automatically detected or something like that. But I think okay, yes, running, very good. Okay, good. So let's go back to the GraphQL. Here, let me just get rid of these comments so you can focus on the actual code. So as Cedric was explaining, there is a panel to write queries or mutation or whatever, a big play button to execute them, and on the right side panel, you will see the results. So this is the schema that we saw in the schema resource file for the application. And let's just, you remember that we had show and genre. Let's just try a very simple query. So I'm copying them off the GitHub repo, and this is a query called just title. So the name of the query is arbitrary, but shows has to match whatever is in the schema. So I'm asking for just the title property of the objects of type shows, so of the query shows, and the result is, look, a list of shows with title. Again, this is not coming from the database. Indeed, your database is still empty, but something that I might have shown a bit less quickly. Here, you see values are encoded, hard-coded in the code. So shows, for example, shows data fetcher, you see, has just a bunch of items hard-coded, which are exactly what we are going to see here. So no database involved, but still you see the mechanism at work. Then you can change the query and add. Actually, I could replace it, but I can also just paste a new query below the other because they have a different label. And when I run, I'm asked which one you want to run. So with release year, you see this second one is the same query as before, just adding a new field in the request. And the result, you guessed it, there is a new piece coming back from the server. So you can really customize your response after all. Then there are also ways to apply filters. So this is, again, supplying a parameter to the show query where I can specify a title, and guess what happens? I just get back one single show, and so on. You can also collate different queries in a single queries in a single request. So this is a single query that contains asks for shows and genres, and if I run it, you will basically get back everything that is hard-coded in the application. So you see, you can play with these requests, and a cool thing is that if you expand on this, you see these arrow docs here and on the upper right. If you expand it, you can, this is in particular, GraphQL makes for a cool interactive way to navigate the schema. But the point is that a GraphQL server usually exposes its own schema in a standard language. So you can navigate. What is in query? Oh, shows and genres, very cool. What is a show? A show has title filter, which is a string. Or what is the type show? Show is title and release year. What is an int? an int. Okay, well, I guess you know what an int is, but you get the point. So you can actually quickly navigate the schema, which is exposed along with the API itself. And this is all done in the DGS framework, but in many frameworks. This is all done for you without the need to write anything explicitly about that. By the way, a remark might be in order. There is a bit of worry in general about a public API, a GraphQL API in production exposing the schema, because that might be an attack vector, because it might expose too much of the internal structure of the API, of the data structure. It might expose, in particular, it might offer, a malicious actor might use the information in the schema to craft a very heavy query involving a lot of requests internally, maybe also an infinite query, because you might have nested objects in a recursive way. So there are, let's say, many are of the opinion that once you get in production, the schema should not be made public, which is an opinion, but it sure would close most of the possible security issues with GraphQL. But that's, again, it's not one size fits all.
No, yeah. I like to have the schema open just to see what's available, but you know, I'm with you. What I would do is, technically speaking, having some counter measure, like escape the queries if you can and put a rate limiter. But hey, that's me.
Yeah, there are various ways. So yeah, it's, of course, there are also ways to publish the schema, not for the world to see, but for all members of your organization to see. So there are actually outsourced schema repositories that handle versioning, but okay, that's a bit more advanced stuff. Okay, so I see there is, Joseph has trouble with GP, that's very strange. Maybe it might be that you have a strange Git pod. Sometimes that happens. But if you don't...
If that's the case, probably just close and open again.
I'll go ahead. You might want to open a new Git pod in this case, because sometimes it just starts in a bit strangely, let's say. Very rare, but it happens. Okay, so I think it's time to move to the second part of this experimentation, that is moving to the GraphQL playground. So let me skip the React part, because the client, we will work with the client later. And it's time to go back to ASTRA. Time to go back to ASTRA. And there we are. So we were left with having a nice database ready to use here. And as Cedric said, a similar tool to interactively experiment and play with GraphQL queries and requests is provided for you within ASTRA. And not kidding, because I'm going to show you how to get there. So you see this workshop database that you just created. Please click on it. Now, you see there are a bunch of tabs here. If you click on the Connect tab here, you will see a lovely bunch of different ways to interact with the database, because ASTRA can be accessed in very many ways. Different APIs, document, REST, GraphQL, or you can use drivers in various languages. You can use SDKs, and so on and so forth. Today, of course, we focus on this item here. You see GraphQL API here. And if you click on GraphQL API, the main page here will tell you everything you need. And in particular, you see there is a launching GraphQL playground here. Now, again, you choose your workshops database, you go to the Connect tab here, you choose GraphQL API, and on the right-hand side, you will see launching GraphQL Playground. And there is here a funny looking URL that's going to be different for any of you, because that's the playground for your own database instance. So if you click on this, there you go. So this is my very own playground that is plumbed to work on my own database. And of course, it is not able to do anything yet, you see. Whatever you run, oh, it will work automatically. That's cool. Oh, I see, but that's something new. You know, I didn't know that.
Yeah,
But
it's
Cedric,
working as
that's
well for
today.
Striker.
That's something that this morning I didn't see, maybe.
Yeah, you don't need to provide
That's
the
super
token
cool.
anymore. Yeah,
Okay, so that's
it's done
absolutely
for you.
lovely. You see, in any case, if you run into errors, the first thing you do is to check that you are providing this header, X Cassandra token, and then your token here. That's very important because, of course, this GraphQL playground is a web application as any other. And as by itself, it would not be able to just go to your database and speak to it, unless, that is, you provide authentication. So in general, you would be providing your token and making sure it is given here in the header. But a recent improvement in Astra UI, which I love, I have to say, is that the token is there for us to use already, and that's great. So you probably are good, ready to run some requests, some queries, and maybe also some mutations here in the GraphQL playground of Astra. But this time, that's cool. This time you're going to actually reach the actual database, the AstraDB instance you created, and create table, populate table with data, and read data from it. So let's go. We went through the opening playground. And one thing, so this playground is very similar to what you just saw. So there is a left panel to put the query, a big play button, and then a right-hand panel with the result. But there is an important point. You see there are two tiny tabs here. One is called GraphQL Schema, and the other is called just GraphQL. Now, these are two different endpoints. These, if you look at this URL here, the ending of this one is GraphQL Schema, and that is a special API endpoint, a GraphQL API that is used to do schema changes. So creating tables, listing key spaces, deleting tables, and all that. So schema operations, DDL in database language. But the GraphQL tab instead is used to do DML, so reading and writing data, basically, on existing tables. And in this case, that's we might go there in a second. Let's go back to the schema. In the schema part, the first thing is we want to create a table. And to create a table, we have a nice mutation ready here, and that's in step 6C. So right after, we are in step 6, hook up the data layer. First thing is open the GraphQL playground, make it work, all good. Now let's run the first mutation. So there are various questions I can hear in my mind. One is, why in the schema? Well, we are creating a table, and this table will contain, by the way, the genre names, like action, adventure, anime, whatever. And why is it a mutation and not a query? Well, that's because it is not just reading data on the shape of the tables, but it is creating a table. And I will skip the details, but one important thing is that we are creating a table called reference list in the key space intro GraphQL. Remember what the key space is. And then this table will have basically a label column and a value column. And the first one is used as the partition key, which is something internal to how Cassandra works. Unfortunately, I'll stop here on this topic, which is very cool. And let me run this mutation. If you run it, you will get back reference list true. That means, yes, I created the table. So at this point, the table exists. But of course, it's empty. It's empty, but we can insert data, which is step 7. We can use GraphQL to insert data. Now, remember, this is a separate endpoint to handle schema, so creating tables and all that. So let me go to the GraphQL tab here and make sure instead of system here at the end, I write intro GraphQL. Remember, this is the name of your workspace, of your key space, sorry. So, let me put that in again. Ending of URL must be intro GraphQL in second tab. So we are now working with data I/O, writing data, reading data. Let's first write data, which is a query or a mutation. Of course, a mutation. And there is this long mutation here. Now, again, this is a mutation because we want to write data, not only read them. Let me just paste it here. This is the long one called insert genres, which is inserting genres. You see, it is a bunch of individual actions, individual insert reference list operations with some parameters, which basically say which column, which row we have to add. And besides doing something, mutation can also return something. In this case, we also ask to give us back the value of the column called value. Now, if I run this one, it will be run at once, and I will get back all returned items, which is good, like this. So you see, I can trust now this GraphQL API endpoint to have inserted data in the table, and also I'm getting back value action, value anime, value award winning, all good. Now, this is actually something that is going to the database, has been written to the database, and also has been returned to me, but that's incidental, I would say. Okay, so that's it. And at the moment, we have data in the database. Let's try a bit of reading data, of course, because this time, finally, instead of mutation, we will do a good old query. So this is the simplest query you can think of, basically. Oh, there is a point that I want to stress. In the GraphQL server that was written before the one of GraphQL, we had, you remember, we had just shows and genres, and that was it. Now, those were static things described in the schema and made available and auto-wired through the magic of Spring Boot, whatever, but that was it. Now, here the situation is a bit different because there is a variable schema. At some point, a table might appear or disappear. So there is need, and this is done by Stargate for you, there is a need for some sort of dynamically available operation names. No? So this, you see, what is insert reference list? That's, you never saw this defined anywhere, but that's automatically created for you. And that's a feature of how GraphQL works on top of, so how Stargate implements GraphQL. It creates dynamically query mutation names, in this case, insert followed by table name. And that's done for you dynamically. So that's why you might be a bit puzzled at these names. Those are just standard created. Of course, you find links to GraphQL documentation in ASTRA at the end of the README, and also from within the ASTRA UI, which is very important. There are a bunch of examples to navigate all these details, but now let's move on. Let's go back to reading values. So query get all genre. Let me, well, maybe for ease of reading, I will replace this with this one. We are reading all rows in the reference list table with the value of label genre. So all genres that we just inserted. Let's see. Yes, that's working, and we are getting back the genres. Of course, we are just asking for value column here. The other, we know it's just genre, so no problem. Okay, so that's it for the GraphQL playground. Of course, let's say you're developing an application, you will probably use the playground to test queries, which will then you would like to embed in your application somewhere, as they are, like copy-pasting them as strings probably. That's exactly how you would do, but I think at this point I stop here at reading and I give it back to Cedric for a bit more of learning about general properties of GraphQL.
Yeah, and maybe doing a recap using a nice schema that
Yes.
like what I like
There
to
you
do.
go.
You know, I realized that we keep seeing QL, you know, and L everywhere, like DML, DDL, GraphQL, GQL, GraphQL. So let's put things back in place. So
Yes, maybe,
first,
sorry, maybe it's a good time to mention that graph databases and GraphQL have really not much to do with each other. And to
yes,
confuse you
exactly.
more, I have a t-shirt with a graph database, but the logo is similar to GraphQL logo. That was to make you even
Come
more
on.
confused.
Yeah, so let's put some clarity here. So indeed, nothing to do with graph. And the confusion maybe come first from the name. So it's called graph because you can work with a graph of object and get as many nested level as you want, like a graph of object. And some graph vendor, like graph database vendor, namely Neo4j, like to associate both because it's trendy. So GraphQL is just the way to do APIs. So in the first part, Stefano starts very basic GraphQL API to demonstrate you GraphQL. And then he moved to Astra and tested another GraphQL API and again consuming. Both time it consumes an existing API. So now the question, we can jump immediately to the front end React and again show you how to consume a GraphQL API in React. But we would miss a key part. What if you had to build your own GraphQL API? Okay, what is the life cycle? What is the journey if you have to build your own? Well, so this is what we try to put in these slides. So to build your own GraphQL API, first you need to know the types. What are the name of the objects? What are the attributes of the objects? And so those can be described as the CDM, conceptual data model. This is an input you need to have. You can use entity relationship diagram if you want, but the format is not important. You need those objects, relations, and attributes. Second would be the workflow, the access pattern, the queries. Of course, you want to create, read, update, delete those entities. No big deal, but maybe you want to do something a bit more complex. You want to compose, insert multiple entities at the same times, and those will be listed at what we call the application workflow. It counts off your specifications. Based on that, you have two paths, two ways. What we did so far was the design first. We show you the types, okay? And based on the types, we are using some framework, GraphQL frameworks. So DGS built by Netflix was one of those in Java. You also have GraphQL Java. You also have Spring GraphQL. If you are working with JavaScript, it will be probably Apollo GraphQL or leading the way all the way around.
Apollo
And
is
so
good.
those frameworks will generate some stub, skeleton of the function, empty block of code that you have to build. And these empty block of code skeletons are built based on the interface. Okay, that's one way to do it. But if, like me, you are an old Java geek that always do code first, build my own Java object, you can do that as well. You create your objects and attributes based on your concept data model, and you will ask the very same framework to do the others operation, starting from code and exposing a GraphQL schema. And to do it, you need to document your code. You need to explain the framework how to move from Java code or TypeScript code up to the GraphQL schema. And to do so, you are using annotations. And back a bit to this DGS app that you started in the previous hands-on. without knowing really why. So it's a Java application built with DGS by Netflix and exposing a GraphQL. And this is what we use to invoke it. How it has been built, and Stefano explained that as well quickly. First, you created your type. The type is genre, and the attribute is value. It's a POJO, plain old Java object, nothing special about it. Then you created your functions. What should we do with those genre? Well, you create a data fetcher, and the name is pretty explicit, right? This guy will look for the data when you execute the queries. So you have a first annotation, DGS component. So at startup, the app will scan this class and say, oh, this needs to be invoked at runtime when the second annotation is kind of doing the mapping, DGS queries. So when you do this query, you should invoke the genres function part of the genre data fetcher. And then it's a fluent Java 8 as we love. But this guy, you create the code first, then based on this DGS framework, we were able to see the schema exposed in GraphQL. Okay. All right. So now what about the front end? If you want to consume that GraphQL API, what should you use? Which framework should you use? And I think now, if you have done a bit of React, you see, oh, I will use Apollo GraphQL. This is a client to invoke a GraphQL endpoint. Or I will use just a HTTP client. And the more famous HTTP client out there is Axios. So with Axios, you shape your HTTP request in the proper way and invoke the GraphQL endpoint, and you're good to go. That's good, right? Yeah, but not good enough. Remember, I told you if you invoke the data services from the front end directly, in the request, you need to put your token, you need to put your credentials. And because it's JavaScript, it's executed at the client side in your browser, and anyone can access the token. So you need this backend for front end. Remember, we are back to that. We need something in between the data layer and your front end. And to implement these backend for front end, today we are using a framework called Netlify. Okay, Netlify is super easy. That's probably kind of the future of JavaScript. That's bold, but you do have your JavaScript that you will compile and make it as small as possible. Do all possible optimization at real time. This is what's called static page rendering. Then all this static page rendering is deployed is the most possible performant way to do a web app, to deliver static web content, which is CDN, Content Data Network. When those works, right? Lately, we had a couple of global failure of C, like Cloudflare. But nevertheless, okay, so all your static code is rendered as plain HTML and served with the CDN, super, super fast, close to the user. And when it comes to your backend accessing the data, they provide you a way to do it, a serverless way to do it. It's called Netlify functions. You will define a JavaScript function and say, oh, this function should be an HTTP API. And I'm not even exaggerating. You will say, you will declare a function, function, arrow function, and just put that function in the proper file and say Netlify, this function is an API, and it will do it for you.
That's very cool.
So now this is what our front end look like. So it's still Node.js, it's still Netlify, but your static resources are meant to be rendered and deployed on CDN. We won't do that today. We just use the dev, but for the backend, we will use serverless function.
Yeah.
And I'm probably not clear enough, but Stefano will walk you through the code.
Yeah. So if I may just add one thing, as Cedric said, today we are not going to do the full deploy to Netlify and actually take advantage of the CDN serving the static part and the serverless functions running for us, serverless, the server side, let's say, the functions to access the database. But if you're interested, we just ran a workshop about GraphQL, which is a Netflix clone, and we went all the way to running it into Netlify for real. So you might be curious, please go there, and there are a lot of more details on this part, because today we're just touching them lightly. Okay, so let's go with the next part of the hands-on. So I invite you to please jump to your Git pod, where the left-hand side of the left-hand console is ready for us to work. And this is where we will run the client. Now, as Cedric said, the client is not just the client, but it's actually the client and a bunch of serverless functions, which in production we run serverlessly, but in a totally separate place conceptually from the client. So separate that you can actually give secrets to the serverless functions, and they will not be in the client, because the client will be a bunch of static files served by a CDN for you, so always quick and ready. But they will run, the code in the client pages will run in the user's browser. But the serverless functions will run in the servers, in the infrastructure handled for you by Netlify, and that's the production thing. Today we are running in dev mode, which is also very cool, because as soon as you will see now, we install a small node package that mimics this setup locally in your machine, or maybe better in your Git pod. So within Git pod, we will run in dev mode, and there will still be a pretend serverless function place where the functions will run and will be accessed. So the full life of a request from the client will be the client speaks to the serverless functions. They know secrets. They are able to speak to the database, actually to the GraphQL target layer in the database. They will get values back, and they will give them back to the client. So this is what happened to your good old big API architecture with the client on one side and the database on the other side. The serverless functions have become a very thin layer, and we will have a look at the code. But first, let's start it, shall we? Okay.
Yeah.
So actually, we just recently reshuffled the order of this practice. So I'm going up in the README to the chapter called Startup React. Sorry for this inconvenience, but we are now at step 5, Startup React. So everything is ready here. Make sure you are in the GraphQL client examples directory. And that's more or less your typical, let me close the backend and close a bit of things. Okay, close backend. Let's open GraphQL client examples. You see, it's basically your typical React application. There is a source with components, app.js, and a bunch of stuff, the usual React setup, but there is also this funny directory here, functions. Now, the cool thing is, as Cedric said, as soon as a JS file is here in functions, it will not be part of the client proper, but it will be run as a serverless function, or it will be mocked serverless as in the dev version. But the point is that this is just a simple JavaScript function that has some input, and it will return some stuff here, whatever. And this will be exposed as a serverless function by the Netlify infrastructure or the pretend infrastructure when we are running in development mode. And what does this function do? Well, this is, you see, this here is a string, a big string containing, guess what? A GraphQL query. And this is part of what will be sent with a simple, well, actually, this is node fetch, by the way. So this is a very simple, basic HTTP client, and you could do curl to reach a GraphQL endpoint. So the important thing is that this is just some HTTP request where we send, among other things, the query text, and we will get back a JSON, which is what the serverless function in turn will give back to the client when that has called it. So client, serverless function, GraphQL in Stargate, in ASTRA, and then the data at the end. So there is a full stack here of a request life cycle. The other interesting point is that you see the functions to work will have access to some secrets. You see the token here, or the GraphQL endpoint to reach. This is not client. So it is safe and not a security hazard to make these available. And we will do that in a second. But my point is, let's start with running a client. Of course, so the first thing is we have to install this Netlify CLI package. So let me do that. We are in step 5, npm install Netlify CLI. This is just one more node package on top of the already long list of packages in this as a node development once. Okay, so we have, okay, this is done. And okay, so that's almost it, because the next step is just Netlify dev, which is the command to say, okay, Netlify, take this React client, run it, build and run it, and in the meantime, make available locally, but it is a secret of the mock, make available the serverless functions. And there we go. You see, if you just run Netlify dev, you probably saw a simple browser open within Gitpod with some URL, which starts with 8888. This is maybe not much convenient to show you. So if you're okay, I will. And you might want to do the same. You might want to copy this URL and open it in a full real tab of your real browser. There we go. You see, this is, those of you familiar with React will recognize this is basically the vanilla boilerplate React application of create React app. But the contents, oh, look, what do we see here? The shows and the genres. That's great. Let's do a step back. So there is now a React a client application running, and it is getting some data. That's cool. And let's inspect 1 second more what is here, what is happening here. So maybe I close it here so we can focus on the code better, but the application is there waiting for us to go back to it. So, well, I'm not going too much in detail with React, but if you look at app.js, it has 4 sections. One is shows, local, one is genres, local, then it shows by name AstraDB, and reference list AstraDB. If you look at the various components which are here in components, for example, let's look at shows. Shows is part of the client, is a React component, and it is using fetch in turn to reach a Netlify function through a special local URL. So this is part of the client where the actual request to the serverless function takes place. And if you go to this get shows backend serverless function that is mentioned here, this is, okay, you see here, what is the URL of this request? It is the locally running Java GraphQL server, the one that has no relation to the database, the one that was mocking data in its own hard-coded way in the code. And this is the getAllShows query we have run earlier in this GraphQL. So this is working because all within Gitpod, client, serverless function, Java server, and back. So this is the full request behind what you see here. This shows local, and it works. And genres local, right, the same. If you look at the code, it's really the same. Now, the other two sections of this React app, I expect to hear shows by name AstraDB, but that's not working. You see, is loading. That's a bit fishy. These are not working. Of course, we never gave the serverless functions any information about where to reach our database. Come on, how could it work? Even though the data, we already wrote data to ASTRA-DB, we wrote the genres at least, but how can the serverless function know that? Because you see, if you open one of those two Astra.js serverless functions, they look for an Astra GraphQL endpoint variable in the environment. They look for an ASTRA-DB application token variable, of course. And there's nothing like that. So we have to provide these. And to do that, which is again not the same as giving secrets to the client, of course. To do that, to provide the required secrets to the serverless functions powering the client, so in the Netlify setup, we first stop the client. So let me go to this client console here, the left side console, and hit a Control-C. Okay, Control-C. I just stopped the client. Now, and it's all here in the instructions. This is something we saw. Okay, maybe later we will go back to the hooks and React, but I want first to make the full thing work. So hook up the data layer with ASTRA-DB. Oh, no, this we did, sorry. And insert data we did, so it's here. Okay, hook the database to the React.js application. Okay, so there is a nice command that does, so basically what we have to do, you see there is a .env file here, the standard naming for a .env file here, and it just contains one single puny line, which is the Java GraphQL endpoint. By the way, this has been customized for you at startup, and it contains the URL to reach, guess what? The Java server that was running and we used GraphQL to speak to. But there's nothing else. So let's add stuff. And to add stuff, there is a very handy command line ready to be used, which is this Astra setup. And to run it, you see we are in step 9, npm exec Astra setup, and then database name workshops and key space name intro GraphQL. So if I run it, it will ask me, hey, tell me your database token. So finally, I can get it from my notepad. I can paste it here, Control V, enter, and everything should work out of the box. That's great. You see, in real time, the env file has been enriched with everything needed, in particular, GraphQL endpoint and, I guess, application token. Those two will be used by the GraphQL, by those two serverless functions that are accessing Astra. And that's it, because now all we have to do is to restart the client. So let me close this one. Just let me close the running client. I go back to Gitbot and Netlify dev again. So Netlify dev, let's see. Now the client is built, the serverless functions are set up, and again, this is open here. I don't like it. I want to see it big. Let's see. Shows local, genres local, no surprises here. And then shows by name. Uh-oh, there's a problem here. Now, that was expected, but let's go step by step. Reference list, reference list ASTRA-DB. Now it's working. Look, action, anime, award-winning, everything. This is now the full request going around. So from the client to that particular serverless function that is reference list here. Sorry, no, this is the component. I wanted to open, oh, let me close this, too many windows. Get shows Astra and get genres Astra. So get genres Astra is the one that queries reference list from the Astra GraphQL, from the actual database. You see, this is the text of the query. We have been running it in the playground, right? And this is now part of the serverless function, but now it has the secrets needed to actually work. And that's why we finally see the genres from ASTRA-DB query all the way. So now this part works. Great. Except the previous part does not work, but I think, who knows why? Can someone guess why this part does not work? Maybe the error message might be a bit cryptic, but if you think about You have 27 seconds to write in the chat why this does not work. You see, that was expected indeed. No one,
Yeah,
no one. Okay, I'll tell
the
you.
red message, yeah, the red message is not that easy to read.
Yeah,
I mean,
okay.
at least.
But anyway, the point is that you remember when we went to the playground and we created the list, created the table for the genres, and then we wrote the genres, and then we read the genres, all good. But we never did anything for shows. Indeed, that's all to be done. Simply, there is no table yet with the genres. So let's do that. You see, because let's do that properly. If you go to get shows ASTRA, there is a GraphQL query here. Why don't we try running it in the GraphQL playground? And that's exactly the same error that you see in the client. You see, validation error, show by name is undefined. Yes, there is no such a table yet. That's the point. Yes, Satish got it right. And luckily, since we are lazy, we have here the very mutation that is needed to create this new table. But I have to go to the playground, jump to the GraphQL schema tab, and I run this create shows table mutation. Let's see, this should now work. Yes, create table has worked. And now the table is there. While we are at it, we insert just a couple of shows. So Stranger Things and Ozark. And this is, again, inserting data. So I have to jump to the GraphQL tab. And I add this as a mutation. By the way, did you notice that there is a small Q and a small M here, reflecting the fact that now I have in my notepad here, I have both a query and a mutation. Isn't that cool? So let's play this insertion. This will insert in show by name two things, two entries. Let's run insert shows. Yes, now it worked. And I think at this point, if I run get all shows, which I just can do by this play button, it will work. Great. So you know what? I expect at this point, if I just refresh the client, I expect everything to work. Shows by name, there we go. You see, now everything is super nice, super perfect, and we won. You see, so now this is a bit of a funny application because it is simultaneously querying two different GraphQL APIs, one running locally as a Java server application, and the other is provided by us through the Stargate GraphQL layer in AstraDB. But still, they are all using the GraphQL protocol, and every request is fulfilled and answered, and this is how the client gets populated with all values. And speaking of that, since we happen to have 5 minutes, I want to spend just a little time on something React-ish. Namely, I was showing app.js, which is basically the main page is just a bunch of these 4 components: shows, genres, shows by name, reference list. Let's just look at one of them. For example, shows by name, which is the one we just fixed. So if you go to shows by name here, this is a React component, a functional component. So there's nothing weird going on if you know a bit of React. The important thing is that here, except, okay, there are error cases, so there are some states to keep track of whether we are actually in the process of loading data or if there is an error. And the error case, you saw that at work. But if everything goes right, this is just what happens. So for every item returned for every item found in GQL result, which is another React state, more on that in a second, we are just returning a div with title and release year. So this is the main part of how the client virtual DOM is built. And this is these. So these 2 lines in the client are created by this part of the functional component. But let's go to states, because we have a bunch of states. The most interesting is GQL result and of course state and setter. And these are used, GQL result is used. So there is an effect that is being executed when the component loads, you see, and this calls fetch data. What does fetch data do? Well, that's a function that queries the serverless function get shows ASTRA and just sets the GQL result to whatever the call has returned. And as soon as GQL result is changed, there is another important effect here. And when GQL result changes, well, a few things are checked to check if there are errors and similar things, but this is basically what enables then regeneration of this part. So this is how the React, this is a way to hook React and GraphQL calls, which is very low level. So basically it is a do-it-yourself way, which is of course the right way if you want to learn how things work. But just I want to mention that this is something that also Cedric mentioned. There is a Apollo GraphQL client library which plays very well with React. Indeed, it goes to the point to offering custom hooks made to work with GraphQL requests. So if you are thinking of writing a real application with which uses a GraphQL backend, you might want to consider that one. And I think, Cedric, I think we have seen everything we wanted to show today, because if you go to the end of the repo, it says, that's it, you did it, nice job. Indeed, nice job. Can I ask you to give me a thumbs up if you managed to see your React app running like this?
Yeah, that would be good.
And of course,
and you know,
sorry, go ahead.
No, not only a thumb up, that's the good time to do a screenshot to submit the homework.
Yes.
Because you're done already.
Yes, but actually I think the homework requires to add a new show or genre to the database and take a screenshot of this. So maybe, yeah, that's a good time to mention that. Homework. Oh, sorry, I jumped to the wrong place. Okay, here. So let's go back to homework. Maybe I can finally make this a bit bigger. So homework. It's not just that you attend this and you get a badge. That would be too easy, right? So to get your badge, please show that you got the gist of how this works. And to do that, do the repo. So do the instructions. And if you didn't finish on time, you can start again. You can go back. You can ask us on Discord, whatever. But the important point is that insert a new show or a new genre in the database. I think you have seen a couple of ways to do that. Take a screenshot of the React app showing your own whatever somewhere. Like, I don't know, you want to add horror, or you want to add a new show, whatever, Happy Days, anything. Do that, take a screenshot, and then you go to this link. You see it's here. Maybe I can give you a link here. There is a nice, oh yes, I already responded, of course. There is a nice Google form with a couple of questions to check your understanding of the whole thing, and then you can submit your screenshot, and then give us a few days. We will grade the submissions, and you will get your badge in your mailbox. And then you can brag about it and post it around your social media and, you know, feel a bit better than anyone else. Okay, Cedric, I think we have right time to, I don't know, if there are questions in the chat.
Oh, I don't see question. You know, we have plenty of time to play the game. I think we will be on time and probably even finish a bit earlier today. So, you know, all for good.
Great. So maybe I can jump back to your screen, because with the practice, I think we are done.
Okay.
And there we go. We are becoming big again, and there you are. Okay.
Okay, let's go. 15 minutes to go. Time to wrap up. Let's see. I will need my Menti. Back to Menti. Now is the quiz time. So I will wait for you to join. So same code as before. Let me show back to you. Change
Right.
same code as before.
I have moved you away once more.
24, 14, 17,
I'll
99.
ask.
We are not that much on YouTube, so that makes everyone more chance to
Oh, yeah.
win today. So, you know, that's your reward to stay up to the end.
Yeah. So you got to be fast, but also to give the right answer.
Yeah,
Don't
to be
forget.
correct. Yeah. Okay, right. All right. So I will wait for player here. So 5 questions. Let's see. 15 people there. How many on YouTube right now? Okay, I will wait. Not too much. It's not moving anymore. So I think we will go with those 19.
Okay, cool.
20. Okay, right. Okay, I will start. Let's go. And question 1. GraphQL is a query language, a server-side runtime, a query language and service-side runtime, something you plot data on. Yeah, so little trap here. It was both the query language and the server-side runtime. So let's see who did it correctly. Barefoot contest. Okay, right. You were the fastest, but you know, nothing is done. We have 4 questions to go. So let's move on to question number 2. If Menti is happy with me. All right, question 2. GraphQL is strongly typed. True or false? I think. No, it depends. Yes, only if it takes protein powder. We had the question before. Indeed, it is strongly typed. Yeah, we discussed about that. So let's see. Oh, Michael just did a mistake, but still, with 16 people, maybe still be in the top 10. Yes, see, look at that. So Barefoot still leading.
I know who
Squid.
Barefoot Cassandra is. You know, there was last time there was Barefoot Contessa, but I kept reading Barefoot Cassandra for some reason, which sort of fits. And I think I know who that is.
Okay, all right, let's see.
Yeah.
He's pretty good, or she is pretty good, actually. So let's see. Question 3. What is main features of GraphQL?
That's nice.
Declarative query has lots of X and Y's, decrease network load, multiple endpoints.
I would say this one is hard to get wrong. Go, go, go. 3 seconds.
Yeah, go. Declarative queries. Indeed, you request what you need, and that's it.
Great. Well done.
Yeah, so Pavan get the good answer, but you know, transform a Menti to get your score on screen.
And
Okay,
Steve jumps to first position.
exactly. Took the lead. Wow. All right. Okay, so no, nothing's done. I think 2 more questions to go. 4 and 5. Are you ready? Let's go.
Answer fast to get more points.
What is ASTRA DB? Oh, this one you would probably need to be fast. It's managed Cassandra with APIs and tools. It's a local in-memory version of Cassandra. It's a cloud-based IDE. It's a movie with Leonardo DiCaprio. Oh yeah, this one is easy. Yeah, yeah. I did not expect less. Yeah, well job, well job. You know, the cloud-based ID is GitHub, and the movie, yeah, it's not DiCaprio there, is it? No, it's Clooney, right? Ad Astra. I'm not even sure.
Me neither.
No, that's the other guy. Oh, I don't know. Anyway,
No idea.
who was the fastest on this one?
Let's see.
Seems Arch was the fastest. No, barefoot. So I'm not sure why. Look at that. It's so close.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, but, you know, nothing is done. Last question. We will have 3 winners. Let's see. In GraphQL, how do you change data or execute action? Insert update, transform, mutation, variation. What is a keyword you are using in your request? Yeah, Ad Astra was Brad Pitt. Yeah, this is what I was.
Right.
I'm not very good at movies.
Thank you, Pavan.
Thank you.
You know, I never watch movies. Come to think of it. Mutation. That's great, everyone. Well done.
So why all our samples are based on movies and genre? Which enchants that?
Yeah, right. Well, I would go with, you know, spiders and stuff like that. So maybe it's better to stick with movies.
That's
I've already spiderized a workshop, and I plan to do
and
even
I will
more.
do with TCG player and all the cardboard games. So yeah, that would be crazy.
Or elementary particles would be great, also as an example.
Oh yeah. I mean,
okay, so Skids, congratulations.
Anyway, our big winners today is Skids. So congratulations. Please take a screenshot now.
Yeah.
You know, just to validate that you win. So 3 winners: Barefoot, Arch, and Squids.
Yeah. So
so take a screenshot right now
and send it to Gary. Email is in the YouTube chat. You should send the screenshot of your winning cell phone screen or whatever, your tab. And that's also there is also a slide on that. So I don't know if you want to switch.
Yeah, I will go back to this. I will go back to the slide just before I wanted to let this question open. If you have topics, language, or framework you want us to cover in the future, please say so. In the summer, we will prepare content for you. So, you know, tell us what we should do. What we should do in September.
Yeah. So, for example, if you feel like you absolutely want to learn about how to write a GraphQL server in React, or sorry, in JavaScript, in Node, well, that might be a good option since you're here. And
or in Python.
Yeah.
What about Python? Yeah, let's do more.
Then I'm sorry you ended up 4th, but next time you might be having better luck. Anyway, congratulations to you, to everyone for participating, not just to the game, but of course to the full workshop, which I hope has been useful and funny, maybe. I can move Cedric back to a position because that's...
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, speaking of next time, so we told you about the homeworks already. So to get your badge, this is the step you need to do, including the insert, mutate, show, and genre of your choice in the database, as stated by Stefano. As you can see on the channel, we do have a lot of workshops. So if you get bored, you know, take one of those recordings and go with it to get a chance to win one of those badges. Why not?
And to learn even more useful stuff, of course.
And to learn even more. See, we are covering a lot of topics, right? I think. Yeah. Anyway, so if you have any question after the session, go on Discord. We will be there waiting for your question. Again, 19K people there, so great community. And this beautiful slide, still waiting for the graphics. So in the summer, we will start a 3 weeks program to have people learn more about Cassandra, our NoSQL database of choice. So the first week, July 20th, will be Getting Started, Cassandra Fundamentals Introduction. 27th July will be Building a Proper Data Model. And the last week will be Build Efficient Application with Cassandra using Java and Python code. And that will, if you attend those three, you will, get ready to take the courses for free on academy.datascience.com, and we would redeem you a voucher to try the certification. Cassandra certification are about $150 per attempt. But hey, if you do the program with us this summer and you get serious about it, you get a voucher to try for free. So, it will be available soon on datastack.com/workshop. I don't think it is right now, but stay tuned. Anyway, the live will appear also on the YouTube channel. So if you did not subscribe, please consider to do so. Use the like button and all the nice stuff of YouTube.
Yeah. So if I may add, today we just saw Cassandra incidentally as the backend, as the database on which all this was built. But if you are planning to build a cool application and you are thinking of scaling, of course, we recommend Cassandra, which is a very cool database, and there is so much to learn about that because it's very cool. So that's why we are always a bit sad if we have to sacrifice speaking of Cassandra for other things. That's why we always have other workshops more focused on Cassandra, data modeling, application development, how Cassandra works. And you are very much welcome to join us in those workshops. So
nice.
I think
so stay tuned, watch for the YouTube channel. Those lives will be out. But until then, have a great start of summer, and see you in 3 weeks then.
Yeah, and subscribe to our channel. Okay.
Yes.
Thank you for being with us. See you next time. Goodbye. Now a bit of music. Bye-bye.
And as always, don't forget to click that subscribe button and ring that bell to get notifications for all of our future upcoming workshops.
A being gifted with powers from the goddess of Cassandra, who grew those powers until she could multiply at will, move with limitless speed, and unmask hidden knowledge. With those powers, she was able to fully understand the connectedness of the world. What she saw was a world in need of understanding. From that day forward, she sought to bestow her powers on all who came into contact with her, empowering them to achieve wondrous feats.